Welcome everyone to today's AllTrantek webinar titled AAR Car Repair Billing and Auditing. I am Eric Starks, Chairman and CEO of FTR, and I will be your moderator for today's event. We are delighted to be able to bring you today's webinar. Now, as a bit of house cleaning, I want to let you know that there will be a webinar replay available by this Thursday, April 13th. An email reminder will be sent once the replay has been posted. So the format for today's webinar will be formal remarks from our speakers. This will then be followed by a question and answer session. The length of this webinar is scheduled for 1 hour. All of the formal remarks will be completed within 45 minutes. So this will allow for at least 15 minutes of Q&A. Let's move on to the formal presentation. Joining me today is the distinguished Patrick Figge. Pat is the maintenance data manager, and as part of his responsibilities, he audits AAR bills and processes and he processes counter billing authorities at AllTrantek. Previously, Pat worked in management positions involving railcar maintenance, billing and distributions, collections, and quality assurance. Pat is licensed to practice before the Service Transportation Board and is certified in mechanical repairs and inspections. Now, another distinguished transportation expert joining us today is Jerry Charaska. Jerry is the Director of Mechanical Inspection Services at AllTrantek. He brings nearly 4 decades of experience to AllTrantek, including plant manager positions at rest cars facilities. His background includes the management of third-party client car inspection projects, startup operations, has extensive knowledge of the Association of American Railroad Standards and Federal Railroad Administration regulations, facility permitting requirements, procedure development, inventory purchasing and management, and the preparation of operating budgets. Phew, that's a long-winded thing. So Jerry has tons of experience, and he has other consulting activities that he does, as well as organizing and managing all of AllTrantek's independent car inspection services. So I would like to thank you both for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Eric, very much. A little bit about AllTrantek. We are a fleet management and training company. We also do, of course, car inspections, and we've been in business since January of 2000. We manage approximately 270,000 rail cars at the moment, and we pretty much cover all of North America. And we're here to help anyone that has rail cars and anything to do with rail car and the movement of those rail cars. Today's course outline is about AAR billing. The critical items that you need for AAR billing is a billing repair card and a office manual and field manual. The office and field manual are critical items that are required in the billing repair card. As you go through, when you see a BRC, you'll look at all the information that comes from the office manual and the field manual. Today's webinar goal is understanding the AAR manual, creating AAR billing repair cards, NITLI codes, common errors, contract shop billing techniques, and we'll talk a little bit about railing. The office manual and the field manual go hand in hand when you're doing billing repair cards, and they're both critical items that you'll need to understand the bill and to write a bill. Elements of the billing repair card. Elements in the field manual are very critical. Section A is the wear limits and cause for renewal of the part or component that the part is being changed. Section B is the correct repairs. What repairs are the correct items to put on the replacement part? How is that component replaced correctly? How is it welded or welding not permitted? Section C of the field manual will always cover recondition requirements. Recondition requirements, for example, would be coupler bodies, draft gears, turned wheel sets, truck bolsters, and side frames, for an example. Section D is always welding requirements. Can I weld on the item or not? And that will be specified in this Section D. Section E is general information. General information will include items, what you can do about how to replace that item with another component. What we're going to focus today on is Section F. Section F is the billing repair data requirements. And one critical component and rule in doing this is Rule 83, the preparation and organization of that repair bill. Field manual basics. If you look at one, for example, the rule of trough hatch covers, you can see each of these sections. Section A for cause for renewal. Correct repair is what you can put on. In this case, if you take an aluminum hatch cover off, you can put aluminum hatch cover back on. Same thing with the fiberglass. If an aluminum is replaced with a fiberglass, it would be considered a wrong repair, and you would have a billing error unless you have permission from the car owner. Welding requirements in Section D is not applicable for hatch cover replacement. And then Section E, general information, hatch covers, talks a little bit about what standard is used and where the standard comes from and how it's developed. And in this case, S2037 details how a hatch cover is developed and how it's made and what are the AAR requirements for such an item. Section F will get into the billing, and that's where it'll talk about location, quantity, condition, job codes, and etc. And then Pat's going to jump in here for BRC.
Well, this is all right. Thank you, Jerry. This is a typical AAR billing repair card. As you can see, we're going to begin with the basics. We're going to identify the car, the customer, and the inspector. And the inspector would apply mostly for a contract repair shop. But in this case, we're just going to concentrate on the car initial, which is SWAR, the car number, 123456, the type of car, which is an LO covered hopper. And also on this billing repair card, you'll notice that there is a defect card JIC party, and you'll see a little in red there. It says CDDCT. In DDCT, which is a rail link platform, this is where the damaged carrier will be identified, and it'll be placed in this field on this particular BRC. The repair date, March 1st, 2017. The split code is the SPLC number, which is 13131, is a specific point location code where it's been repaired at Big Brother Car Repair. And this is basically a split code, is where the actual repair facility is taking place. The next slide. In this particular slide, again, we're identifying this. This is the same slide, but this standard point location code is a 6 to 9 digit code that's assigned to all stations registered by rail carriers. This is actually, like I just mentioned, is the physical location of where the rip track is on the railroad. All right, proceeding onward. The line and location indicate the position of the part needing repair. If you look to your right, you'll see the A end of a car and the B end of the car. Now everyone knows that the B end of the car is where the brake wheel.
The hand brake.
And the hand brake. And the A end is identified in figure A. Now, this particular location will indicate the position of the part needing repair. You see the little arrow there. How many parts are being replaced? 2. The condition code. Is this a new brake shoe? Yes, it is. The condition codes are 1, 2, or 3. In this particular case, the condition code is 1, indicating it's a new brake shoe. The job code, 1840, job code applied is 1840, which is a brake shoe composition, high friction, 2 inches. The why made code is why was this brake shoe replaced? Because it was broken. What job code was removed? The same job code that was put on, 1840. It's a responsibility code 1, meaning that's the owner's responsibility. Now, as Jerry talked about the elements of the BRC, here's some definitions in Rule 83. As we just mentioned, 1 is new material, 2 is secondhand material, 3 is reconditioned or recertified material applied, 4 is wheel set, new roller bearings, and reconditioned, recertified axle. You know, when a lot of people, when they look at these BRCs, they really don't understand what all these codes mean. But if you go to the elements of the BRC, as we just indicated, back on the last frame, the last slide that we were on, Rule 83 gives you everything you need to know. Back on this slide again, there's many job codes in the field manual, and right now we're just focusing on the simple ones. This is a basic BRC repair card. Repair. The alpha or numeric code used to define the area where repairs were performed on a car of the manufactured/remanufactured component applied or removed to a car from the car. In this case, for example, job code 2822, roller bearings, B16512 has a qualifier of 04. This indicates an SKF Incorporated was the manufacturer. Moving on to the next slide. When you fill out a BRC, you got to describe what you're putting in the narrative or description of repairs. You have to describe what type of part you're putting on the car other than the job code. The job code is exclusive to that particular part. However, the description makes it a lot easier for people to understand what's going on if they don't really know their job codes. Again, Rule 83 will tell you the narrative or the job code. The component tag ID. Now, the component tag ID on castings is something that is in EHMS. On castings, you have to have a component ID. For example, on wheels, on slack adjusters, on side frames, on bolsters. Anything that has a casting has to be registered in EHMS, and it has to have a component ID. And this component ID identifies that particular component. Brake shoes, brake shoes do not need component IDs, only castings. So now we're moving on to the why made code. The why made code is probably one of the most important codes to indicate why the part was being replaced. In this case, a why made code is 1. A why made code 3 would indicate it was missing. Here's some of the why made codes that you'll see on a typical BRC. Worn out, broken, missing, defective, bent beyond repairs, obsolete material, wrong, account repairs, leaking, adjust clearance. The most popular ones on a BRC are 01, 02, 03, 05, 06. And that's in that field right there, the responsibility code. Take that back, I'm sorry, the why made code. The responsibility code is used for reporting billing repair data to show responsibility for the repairs made. Number 1 in that field would indicate that it's owner's responsibility. A number 2 in that field would indicate handling line responsibility. A 3 in that field would indicate a defect card or joint inspection certificate authority.
I want to add in here a little bit, Pat. A lot of billing programs that are out there today, once you put the correct job code in, it'll pre-fill in your description, and you'll have to put in the why made code. What happens on errors is that people select the wrong job code. They also select the wrong why made code at times. So it's important that they understand the rule books and how they apply to the billing repair card.
Exactly. So we're taking this out as a manual experience, you know, so you like writing this out by hand. But like Jerry said, though, there's a lot of programs out there that will automatically fill in the description and in the narrative. And we're doing it this way to make it like a handwritten BRC, so everyone's got a good understanding of what a BRC really is. All right. If you go to the job code, in that job code, you'll have a labor price and a material price, and it'll come out to a net charge. Charges are determined as a function of labor hours spent times the labor rate. The AAR labor rate today is like $8 or something like that. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, and then for contract shops, that varies from shop to shop. So
exactly.
When you get contract shop, they'll be based on their labor rate. And you'll have to be aware that sometimes their labor hours are different than the AAR office manual rate. So you have to be aware of that.
Exactly. All right, job code and standard reporting descriptions. Job codes preceded by asterisks are to be used only when work is performed separately and not associated with any other covered by a net applied job code. Now, the remaining job codes in the office field manual are net applied at any time, including all necessary labor and material to complete the operation, regardless of whether work is performed separately or in connection with any other repair, except where applicable per Section C of this rule. So, for example, if a cotter pin is included with the job code, say 1840, let's just use a fictional job code, 4999, many cases you'll find that the railroads will charge separately for each item. They'll charge for a cotter pin and they'll charge for the part. When that cotter pin is included in the net applied job code. So this is where you hear net applied job code. So net applied job codes includes everything associated with making that repair. Now, in the office manual, you'll notice that there's a fixed labor rate and a variable labor rate. A fixed labor rate is a charge that does not vary with the quantity applied. A variable labor rate is a labor charge that varies with the quantity applied. As in this case, we use job code 4005 metal running boards, 20 inches wide or less. As you'll notice, the material is $13.22. The standard hours is 0.198. That's a fixed charge. And the labor charge is $24.86. That's a fixed labor charge. The variable is 0.049. It's a variable charge, and the variable labor rate is $6.15. And you also get a credit for the steel credit, and the net price is $43.39 for that particular job code on condition 1, which is new, and the why made codes we talked about earlier, 2, 3, 5, 6, 13, 25, or 26. So anytime you have a 4005 with a job code 4005 with a condition code 1 with a why made 02 with a responsibility of 1, the net charge is going to be $43.39.
And then another point on this particular job code is the prices per foot, because in the rules, running board is charged by foot, not by each.
Right, that's right. As you look, Rule 50 on the upper right-hand corner, Rule 53, will indicate the rule that this job code is associated with. Now, the maximum amount of feet is 60 feet. You can't charge more than 60 feet. That's the maximum units. Rule 112 is the car repair billing in the office manual. Billing repair data requirement. All billing repair data records must conform to the requirements published in the car Repair Billing Procedures Manual. This manual is available on RailLink's website. Section F of the applicable rule in the field manual for data requirements to be reported for each repair made. Items of repair and associated job codes that may be group billed. Single, multiple, or combination of the following items and associated job codes or repairs only to the same car and when no other repairs are involved. Now, Jerry's going to talk about the National Industrial Transportation League job codes.
And NITLE codes are very specific codes in the back of the field manual in an appendix for NITLE. These were really developed for very specialized parts that the railroads normally don't deal with. For example, special interior coatings, rubber linings, plastic pellet outlet gates, and so on. A lot of these components aren't covered in the standard job codes. And many of the contract shops will use these NITLE codes. And so when you start seeing these NITLE codes, what's important about them is that in our systems, because we do manage 275,000 cars right now, and if we get all the billing repair cards correctly completed, we can then analyze the data if it's correctly coded out. And so if we want to search out a specific interior coating, exterior coating, or specific outlet gates, we can do that if the billing repair card is completed correctly. So all these NITLE codes are in Appendix D. It's laid out similar in many aspects, and you'll use the job code. For example, on this page out of the book, it's 8025, and that's the Sigma 7456 air-cured lining. NITLE codes will also cover items like sumps, washouts, insulation. Those are critical qualifiers used. For example, if you replace fiberglass, urethane foam, or wool insulation, a contract shop can put that code into the billing repair card, and that data will be intact for future use. Man-weight covers. What were you going to say, Pat?
No, what I was just going to add is the AAR is now, there's a tag form now that is going to start putting these NITLE codes in the field manual and the office manual, and they're going to be transmitted through RailLink. The office manual is going to have a 0 rate in there, so it's, you know, these rates vary depending on the shop that you're shopping your car at. But now there's a tag form, it's Car Repair Billing Committee, that is going to start putting coatings. They're going to start with coatings. They're going to put those in the field manual, and they're going to put them in the office manual as a 0 rate. So now they're going to start keeping tabs on how many cars are getting their coatings. It's going to be inside and outside the car. So this is kind of new, and everybody wants to see these NITLE codes transmitted through RailLink, and they want to start keeping statistics on tank cars. Most of this stuff, most of these NITLE codes you're going to find applicable only on tank cars. However, there are times when they are used on other types of cars, but mainly used on tank cars. But this should be interesting to find out how, and they're also going to start putting in valves, gaskets, all sorts of things are going to start coming through RailLink now in the near future. I would probably say in the next year or two that will be possible, and that the job codes will be in the office manual, but they will be 0 rated, because these codes are normal. Railroads don't do these repairs. These repairs are only done by contract shops. Railroads only work on anything below the car and the car body at times. So go ahead, Jerry. Sorry to interrupt.
You've kind of mentioned that because that was at the last meeting you went to, and I'm glad they're going to start doing that, because we need to keep better track of all these components, and the components start growing, and the different interior coatings and car parts and hopper parts, they'll be all covered in the NITLE. There are cases where there's NITLE codes duplicated what's in the standard AAR code also.
But again, they're going to start, we'll be able to provide statistics on valves and coatings and cleanings and all sorts of things where we never had that before, but it's all going to be coming through in the next year or two.
Yep.
This particular, oh, thank you very much. These, what we do for our clients, we audit these bills that we just talked about, these billing repair cards, and we take those BRCs and we take the data from RailLink that we receive from the railroads and we put it into our system. And our system has a bunch of rules where we've taken the field manual and the office manual, and we've taken those rules and we've entered those rules in our system, and those rules, those BRCs bump up against the rules that we've created in our Ray audit system. Now, after we've audited the BRCs, we come up with reports that, like, here's a typical report for our clients where we break it down by the components, by air brakes, body, brake shoes, draft gears, general repairs, and we took, like, for example, let's take air brakes. Let's take truck bolster side frames. We came up with $4,813 of exceptions. Right now, this is the beginning of it, so this was back in May of 2014, and right now they're obviously unanswered because we just audited that particular account. And we break it down by wheels. I mean, look at wheels. I mean, if you go back to that last slide for a minute, you look at wheels, $67,000 in exceptions on wheels. I mean, that's the bulk of this thing, and this is where most of your dollars go, is on wheels. So we took $67,000 in wheel exceptions. Now, here's an example of a summary of what our BRC recap will show to the railroad. And this is just a demo, and this particular demo and this particular audit on this particular invoice was for $3,134.82. And this is just a recap of what we've got to send to the railroad. If the railroads agree with this exception, they'll grant a counter billing authority. You hear the term CBA. You'll hear that a lot in the rail industry. And what that is, it's a counter billing authority. So that means that the railroads agree with your exception and they're telling you to go ahead and send us a bill. So on the next screen, here's an example of a BRC that we audited. Now, that particular job code, 4716, the applied job, you see AJOB, that 4716 is a bottom outlet cap, cam lock type, that's only applicable on tank cars. This particular car, if you look at the type of car, the L, it shows L, that's an LO covered hopper. So they should not have applied this job code to this particular car. So this is a small exception. It's not applicable on this car type for $8.64. The description of the job code is indicated on the bottom. Tank car bottom outlet valve chamber cap reapplied when hanging loose. There is no job code for covered hopper cars. They're going to add that. It's coming up soon, but right now you can't. It may come up soon. Here's a particular example of a jacking charge with a Y-made code of 09. There was no reason to jack this car. They just charged this particular customer to jack the car for no reason whatsoever. Car was jacked unnecessarily, so that, you know, we get the money back for that. If you go on to the next slide, here's an important slide. This particular slide indicates to the particular railroad that the wheel was not reported in EHMS at the time of repair, and there was no condemnable alert at the time of repair. So they changed out these two particular wheels, 1 and 3, locations at 1 and 3, for $2,154 for each wheel set. And there's not, for no reason whatsoever. They just changed these out. They told us in Y-Made 65 that it had high kips. If you look at L1, job code 3131, in the narrative description on the wheel, 36 inches, you'll go across to the Y-Made code under the WM column. It says Y-Made 65. Remove job code 3071. And so that's for a Y-Made of 65, which is a high kip. But there was no high kips on this wheel, and they closed it out anyway. So we also get the jacking back for that as well. On the next slide, this particular car they put on a job code 1268, a cutout cock any size or complete. The cutout cock standard to this car is a combination type. So we're asking them to limit the job code to 1272 to 38, which is a difference of 3842. That's a high price. It's not standard to that car. What's standard to that car is job code 1272. We get these back all the time.
No, this is some of our software that goes through this and kicks these out for you to do a hand audit. Is that correct, Pat?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So like we said earlier, we've taken all the rules in the field manual and the office manual, and we've taken that and we've loaded that into our system. We've taken those rules and we've written a program that bounces off all these job codes against the right job code, and it kicks out these exceptions automatically. Every single BRC that we look at gets audited. It gets eyeballed, it gets audited, and we check everything. This particular job code, there's a lot of duplicate repairs. Now there's probably almost $2,000 in repairs here. As you can see, the standard car test, job code 1145, was entered twice. The air hoses, there's 4 air hoses on a car, not hardly. If you look at there's 2 wheel sets on the same location. There's 2 jacking charges on the A side of the car. These are duplicate repairs. This happens a lot. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not getting your bills audited, this is going to happen to you all the time.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Jerry. Man, that as you guys were talking there, I just kept seeing all these things and going, there are so many possibilities for errors in here. It's astounding. So we have now gotten to the time where this is time to ask your questions. So for those of you attending, if you would like to ask a question, please do so now. You can simply type a question into the question pane on the Go to Webinar sidebar, and we'll be able to stay here and take those questions and get those answered. So let me start with a couple questions for you. So the first one. So how long does it typically take to do an audit? Can you kind of give me a time frame on that?
Well, it depends on the number of cars that the client has, and it really, there's a lot of variables. It typically takes, like large customers with 10,000, 20,000 cars, it could take a couple of days to go through that. But believe me, there's so many variables involved in it that it all depends. I really can't give I could give a ballpark answer for a couple of days. It depends on the number of cars. The smaller number of cars, it could take only a few minutes. But with the larger number of cars, it'll take a while. It depends. It really depends on what types of repairs are being made, how many wheels have to be bumped up against the HMS, how many standard car tests have to be bumped up against the Ulmer file. We bump everything up against RailLink to find out, and also the component ID is very important. Like we talked about that earlier, the component ID depends on how many castings are being audited as well, because those component IDs have to be verified in our system with RailLink, the component ID registration field in EHMS. Again, I can't give a really a solid answer for that. It depends.
Well, I'll give you one example that we had a client that had a high rate of draft gears being changed out at one specific locations. We were tracking it, and they just saw a big spike in draft gears. So actually, we sent one of our inspectors out, and it was actually me. And I walked over there, and I reviewed the rule with them, and they were misinterpreting the rule and changing out pallets and pallets of draft gears. We ended up taking exception to the draft gears. They were not changed out for the correct reason, and a cost savings of about $35,000 to the client. So analyzing your billing data is critical, and watching what it's doing and looking for spikes in certain types of repairs can really pay dividends.
Exactly.
That is yeah.
Yeah, we find this all the time. Once we start auditing a customer's repair bills, we start noticing trends like Jerry just talked about. That's one that we identified for a particular customer in California. Another one is where we identify a railroad. It starts changing out draft gears or coupler bodies, and we found that we've sent out, you have a couple of choices here. You can have an AAR MID inspector go out there, or you can have one of our inspectors go out there. It depends on the situation. But if we start noticing trends, as Jerry talked about, we start noticing trends in components being changed out where these people that work for the railroad do not understand the rules. Sometimes they're new people, the senior people are on vacation and the new people come in. You've got new people that write up the billing repair cards incorrectly. It takes a while to develop a skill set like this to really write up a BRC and bill it correctly. So again, it depends on the situation. If we start noticing situations where coupler bodies are changed out, we'll send Jerry out, or we'll mention it to the customer that he has his choice. He can have an AAR MID auditor go out there, or he can have one of our inspectors go out there.
Perfect. Well, it's great since we actually had a question come in exactly at the same time as you guys started answering that question, and they even sent back that never mind, we're good. So that answered the question. Let's jump into a couple more specifics here. So a question here is about, with the automated BRC systems, what percentage of errors are automatically found?
What percentage of errors are automatically found? I'd say probably 40% to 50%.
Okay.
What I notice about some of the automated billing systems, you still have to have the knowledge of the office manual and field manual to use these automated systems, because you're still manually putting in the job code. You have to select the right job code. You have to select the right condition code. And billing errors still occurred with automated systems.
Exactly. And a lot of times, like we talked about earlier, and that applied job codes, like some car repairmen, they'll put in cotter pins. They'll start billing for job code 4400 cotter pins when they're already included in the job code they've already applied. There's all sorts of, you have to have the knowledge of like Jerry just said, you have to have the knowledge of the field manual and the office manual. You have to really learn those two books. And once you've learned that, you'll see right away when mistakes are made. And our system is designed so that it catches all these types of errors.
Okay.
I think if you're getting a new system,
yep.
if you're getting a new system, it's important that you not only get training in this new automated billing system, but you also should get training on the office manual and field manual, because they definitely go hand in hand. Because I've sat through some of the ones where they automate the automated system, and the people teaching that software don't really have knowledge of the AAR office manual and field manual rules.
Okay. So this is in the same world here that we're kind of talking about, but slightly a different take on here. So one of the things here is that shops, for the most part, they utilize the NITLI codes, right? So, but given that fact, shops also do not load the BRC files via data exchange. So how will these job codes be gathered for analysis by RailLink and the railroads?
Well, the data is transmitted through RailLink. Right now, there's a field indicator in that data field that indicates whether it's a price master yes or price master no. These job codes can still go through RailLink, but they're going to have a price master indicator of a no. The price master indicator indicates whether or not it's coming from the office manual or it's coming from somewhere else. So if those go through to the railroad and they've got a price master indicator of Y, those will air out and they'll have to be changed manually to an N. So that's how the RailLink sorts out the good data from the bad data. But it's really good data, but it's just not, it's a price that is not included in the price master.
Now, to further that answer, when we manage in our systems at AllTrantek, our Fleet Watch system, we can analyze that NITLI codes when they come in. We do manage many cars, 270,000 cars now. We can analyze that NITLI code data in our systems.
But I I thought the question was data exchange. So once a month,
Yeah.
these job codes, these billings to the railroad, will have that price indicated. They should be N. They should be set to N because these NITLIC codes are not from the office manual.
Yeah, you were correct, Pat. That was kind of what the question was asking. So then there's some questions about defective versus broken, things like that. So what is the difference between a defective versus broken and defective versus bent Y made codes?
I'll let Jerry answer that one. He can.
Well, the clause for renewal is the critical component in your rule book, and Section A will tell you the wear limits, gauging, cost for renewal, and it describes what can. For example, a coupler can have a crack and not be condemnable. It could have a half-inch crack behind the horn, and unless it's 1.5 or 2 inches long, it's not condemnable yet. So you have to look at the rule, you have to look at Section A and see what component you're applying it to.
Okay, and that's helpful. So there's someone here that's a contract shop, and so the question here is, when do they have to use AAR prices as a contract shop?
The only time you use AAR prices is when you're doing a JIC car or a defect card, a DDC incident car where it's responsibility code 3. When you're doing wreck repairs is basically the answer to that question.
Okay, and that makes sense. Did you have something to say?
The contract shops that are designed, the job codes, they use the job codes that are described in the field manual and the office manual. Now, if they're billing a railroad, they have to use the prices in the office manual. But if they're billing a car owner, they use the job codes that are in the field manual, but the prices are based on their agreement with that particular car owner, as far as labor and what their markup is on their material. But however, if you're billing a railroad, it has the same price for everybody, regardless of the car owner. It's the same for everyone, and the labor is the same for everyone. So I hope I answered that question for
you. You did.
Yep. So let's stay on repair shops here for a second. So do the repair shops, do they get the feedback from these system audits? Because the thought here is that this could be useful in correcting input errors.
Can you repeat that question?
So from these audits, does this go directly to the repair shops, or can it go to the repair shops so that they can see this information and, as they go forward, correct any input errors? So to your example before, as somebody was reading something incorrectly, they realize now, oh, you guys keep finding the same stuff. And if you tell the repair shop, hey, we keep finding the same things, they can fix that at the front end. How do they get that information?
They get that information from the fleet managers. The fleet managers look at those estimates that come in from the contract shop, and they'll start picking them apart as to what they're going to start looking at stuff that really needs repair and what really doesn't need repair. And if they start seeing things develop, like coupler bodies are being changed out, and it really doesn't matter whether it's a railroad or a contract shop. Our systems will identify, and our managers will identify those particular problems that they see in a shop that are starting to develop and reoccurring. But generally, the managers are going to go through all the BRCs and the estimates, and they're going to pick and choose what they really want or what they need on the car, along with the car owner. So working in tangent with the car owner, that's how we develop our auditing for contract shops. Okay,
good. So there's a question here about can companies that sublease rail cars see these?
Could you repeat that question again?
You cut out, Eric.
Eric? Where is Eric?
I think it was sublease. He asked the question that would a subleasee get to see the repair? Generally not. The reporting mark on the car is actually whoever's registered with Railink. They're going to get the bill, and the subleasee will not see that bill.
Right. This question comes up a lot. This came up at SWARS too. They want to know the railroads are going to bill the car owner, and the car owner is going to bill whatever is the responsibility of the subleasee. They're going to turn those. They're going to take those repairs and have the subleasee pay those charges. Everything goes to the car mark owner. It'd be impossible for railroads to start billing. They don't know who's on a net lease or a full service or what kind of lease they have. So that question comes up a lot.
Perfect. Yeah. So sorry about that. I did get lost there, and so I'm back in the game. So you guys answered that perfectly. So thank you. So a couple more things on some specific items. So does the BRC hours include admin time, part staging time, et cetera, or is it just time on tools?
The labor rate I think the labor rate of the contract shop includes the overhead of that particular shop. So say for example, if you had $75 an hour for a labor rate, when they use that particular job code, the admin time and those items should be covered in that labor rate. Does that answer the question?
However, if it's a railroad billing, there's no overhead. You cannot bill for scaffolding. You cannot bill for anything that is not in the field manual or the office manual. You cannot bill the railroad for that. We see this. That happens a lot. A lot of shops, they start billing for all these overhead costs on a wrecked car. Anytime you see that on a JIC, it's going to get declined. Anytime you see that on a BRC, it shouldn't be on a BRC. So you got to distinguish between railroad AAR billing and contract billing. So
for example, I saw in a contract repair shop, they tried on a line item for extra electricity they used in the shop to do stress relieving on a tank car.
And they tried to bill the railroad.
Sticks out in my mind.
Right, and you try to bill the railroad for that? Forget it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, they did. They actually did.
The thing is, you can only bill the railroad for what's in the office manual and the field manual. All the overhead is already in there. Now, on a contract shop, if a car owner wants to pay for that, that's up to them. But it's something I would not suggest doing. Or would I suggest a car owner do it?
Well, good. I have three more questions that we'll finish up on. There's one about Rule 72. So can you explain the use of Rule 72 items and the use of Z qualifiers?
Rule 72. Jerry, you want to jump in on that? I don't hear my...
Rule 72 is probably one of the more misused rules, as that's the miscellaneous job code, which is 199, 299, 399, and 4099, etc. The only one that's probably used generally more is 4482, which is labor fall protection. 4999 is used a little too much. That's because people, to be honest with you, just get a little lazy and don't want to look up the NITLI or the proper job code. So their go-to is Rule 72. So when you see a lot of these Rule 72, most likely that particular location needs additional training on billing.
40, like Jerry just mentioned, 1999, 2999, those particular 4999, those particular job codes are around when there's no other job code in the field manual to use. So like Jerry said, you have to look in the field manual to find the particular job code that fits your particular repair. And many shops will try to use Rule 72, the material job code, incorrectly.
And so they forget NITLI's there. NITLI's there for a reason. And how many classes I've trained where they didn't even know NITLI even existed.
Right.
And
when shops use NITLI, they have to remember that their AAR 500 byte file's got to show a price master indicator of no, which means what? It means that it did not come out of the field manual or out of the office manual. The pricing did not come out of the office manual.
Okay. Two more questions for you. One is about how can someone obtain additional training in BRC preparation? Can you point them in the right direction?
We just happen to have a person. Yeah, you could contact anyone at AllTrantek, but the main person that you want to talk to is Jan Marino. Jan Marino's number is 708-837-1023. Or anyone else, you can contact me, you can contact Jerry. Anyone here at AllTrantek will be glad to set you in the right direction.
Yep. When we send out the final info, the final presentation, the recording, then we'll provide contact info in there too. And then the last thing too is, what's general expectations of savings or that return on investment that someone should expect from an audit? I saw you said that as a part of the system, automatically, you can see a pretty quick return on some of that. But in total, what should they expect?
Well, again, that depends on the number of cars, and it depends on what we've gotten that month from the particular railroad. We can average between 30 and 40% savings on all the exceptions that we've taken.
Okay, that's helpful. So at least puts it in the ballpark for someone who's never gone through the process before. So that is the end of the Q&A. A reminder that a replay will be available by Thursday, April 13th. We'll send an email once it is ready. So please don't hesitate to follow up with Pat or Jerry or anyone on the AllTrantek team or the FTR team if you need anything. So thank you again, Pat and Jerry, for joining us today. And thanks so much for everyone attending. I hope you all have a fantastic day and a wonderful week. This concludes our webinar.